Dear friends, please join me in prayers.
In spite of all that has transpired,
this is the season of wonder. We are light in the darkness.
Our children are the miracle in our midst.
Our families are the love in our hearts. Our communities are the joy of our souls.
This is the season of wonder.
We are many faiths, one light, many hearts, one love.
Many moments, one eternal gift. May your hearts be filled with wonder.
May your faith be strengthened and renewed.
May your soul be bathed in light.
May your every moment be blessed with beauty and joy.
In gratitude, in silence, in stillness.
Let us awaken to the grace that fills each moment.
And the beauty that fills each heart.
This is the season of wonder.
Dear God, thank you for everything you're giving us. We are thankful. We are thankful. We are thankful.
Hello and welcome. I am the Reverend Jennifer Butler, the CEO of Faith in Public Life, a network of 50,000 religious leaders around the country working for compassion, justice, and the common good. We're so glad you're here today. We're thankful to our esteemed panelists. We're thankful to Tia Mitchell of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for moderating today. And we just want to thank those who are mobilizing their communities and their neighbors in churches, synagogues, and mosques to get vaccinated, because getting vaccinated is an act of loving your neighbor. We need to make sure that everyone is protected, that the most vulnerable can get through this pandemic, and that there are no more variants. And so we are just so excited that the faith community is mobilizing to get everyone vaccinated, and every day we're seeing more and more people join the cause so that we can end this pandemic. Thank you so much, and I'll turn things over to our hosts.
Hello, my name is Tia Mitchell, and I'm the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. Thank you for joining our discussion today. First, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. We're going to go in alphabetical order according to last name, starting with Dr. Ahmed.
Well, thank you, Tia, and thank you to FPL for hosting this important forum. Parvez Ahmed, professor at the University of North Florida and a member of board for FPL.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Ghada Khan, and I am the Executive Director of the American Muslim Health Professionals. And we are a coalition that aims to bring and strengthen the impact of Muslim health professionals across the country to improve the health and wellness of all Americans.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Tia. My name is Joey McKinnon, and I'm the Florida Director for Faith in Public Life, based out of Jacksonville, Florida, where we are working with clergy and faith leaders on a campaign called Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated. Looking forward to sharing a little more later, and it's great to be here with everyone.
Hello, it's good to join everyone. I am Minister Siobhan Williams. I am a retired physician assistant, and I am the organizing ambassador with Faith in Public Life. I am outside of Richmond County, and I'm working also on the Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated campaign with Faith in Public Life here throughout the state of Georgia.
Thank you all again for joining us. We're going to hop right into our conversation. So the first question I wanted to ask, and we'll start with Minister Siobhan. Can you talk about the effects COVID-19 have had on our communities, and especially over the last, we're going on 18 months or so of the pandemic? How has COVID-19 changed our day-to-day lives? And other panelists can also jump in as well.
Thank you. It has been a little over 18 months, and it feels like it's probably been the longest 18 months in a lot of people's lives. During this time, we went from a period of uncertainty and not really knowing what's going on to a sudden change in our lives. We've seen loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, and loss of the way we know life as communal beings that enjoy the fellowship of others. We saw a break in that ability to fellowship. Personally, I have 9 grandchildren, 2 that was born in the middle of the pandemic that I wasn't even able to hug or to see until I was able to get vaccinated. In the past 18 months, I've had 6 deaths in my family. 10 in the last 10 months, 5 of those deaths have occurred, and 3 of them were due to COVID. And we've seen that throughout, particularly in the Black Belt of Georgia. Communities of color have seen such a bright light shine on the disparity that already existed in healthcare. And so now we find ourselves in this part of the pandemic between God and science and research. There's a vaccine available. And so we find ourselves now in a great divide, a position that I've never seen when we're dealing with medicine and we're dealing with public health. Where just the thought of wearing a mask or getting vaccinated would be so politicized and so divided, and instead of based on science, based on a lot of opinion and positions. And so I'm happy to be here today where we can see what can we do as people of faith to bridge that gap and maybe lead this walk on this long journey that we found ourselves in, but lead the walk to being on the other side of this journey. On the other side where maybe we could breathe a little bit lighter, where we don't have that same concern when we're hugging our grandchildren, we're going to our kids' games, could be really enjoyable again.
How Dr. Gada?
We certainly echo what Siobhan just mentioned about the uncertainty and the closure of houses of worship and the revelation of all these different health disparities that were always there. It just became all too clear, but also the pain of loss and being uncertain of what's going to be happening in the future. That's definitely something that our communities were facing. But with these increases in fears and uncertainty within our communities, we found this new increase in collaborations within the Muslim community. We at AMHP, we coordinated with a few national organizations that spanned not only clergy and faith leaders, but faith-based organizations that were in the realm of advocacy and policy work, those who are focused on health professions such as ourselves, also school-based organizations of faith, to come together and create some guidance and evidence-based guidance within the community that was really searching for some answers when it came to COVID. We put together some statements in partnership with informing this coalition and task force, which we actually called the National Muslim Task Force on COVID-19. We also partnered with other organizations that were focusing on the disparity component, where the Muslim Wellness Foundation and the Muslim Anti-Racism Collaboration created the National Black Muslim COVID Coalition, and partnering with them on making sure that all our efforts are collaborative in nature and putting out statements whenever something that came that was on the minds of our community members, like what to do, how to close houses of worship, how to celebrate holidays, how to perform funerals in the midst of a pandemic. Are vaccines acceptable? Are vaccines part of the faith? In the term we use is, are they halal? Are they part of Islamic jurisprudence? So then I think that kind of changed how we look at things, and we're hoping that that collaboration continues. But definitely we saw that need for highlighting the importance of the faith community in this response, and combining the efforts of both the scientific community, the academic community, the health professional community, with the efforts within the faith community, because we saw our youth being so powerful, being such a powerful tool in addressing these issues. So we partnered with IFYC to create a vaccine ambassadors program, where we had 21 vaccine ambassadors who were actually students, medical students, go into their mosques and communities and collaborate a vaccination response. We saw a lot of organizations that were faith-based, Muslim-free clinics also serve as vaccine distribution sites. We suddenly saw this change and shift in the function of the mosque as also a vaccination site. So these changes are really pointing towards the importance, again, of combining and making sure that our efforts to address health disparities or health issues are always done in collaboration and in tandem with other aspects of the community. And we're hoping that this is going to continue on forward.
And Dr. Parvez, can you talk a little bit about COVID-19 impacted you, how it changed your life over the past 18 months?
At a personal level, it changed dramatically. At the beginning of the pandemic, my mom, I'm originally from India, she fell ill and I was not able to visit her, and she passed away. So, and then 12 months later, my dad fell ill, but this time because I was vaccinated, I was able to visit. But because of COVID-related protocols, getting proper treatment, getting even proper admissions to hospital, and my dad was a physician. Even then, it was such difficult to access the system and navigate the system, and he passed away. So during the span of, in the middle of this COVID, I lost several other family members. Not all of them to COVID, but certainly one can say that COVID impacted the treatment and the care that they received from the system, because the system in many cases was so overwhelmed. But when I look at the past 12 to 14 months, or now close to 18 months into the pandemic, maybe a little bit more, I look at that the past almost year and a half, we have lived with a lot of crisis, not just the COVID crisis. We have also lived with a crisis in our democracy. And we are probably still living with it, not sure exactly where our democracy is headed. And I look at how our nation is responding to COVID in the same way I look at how our nation is responding to our crisis with democracy. When people lose faith in institutions protecting life and liberty, two of the pillars that we have seen shaken during this pandemic and this crisis with our democracy, it's challenging. It's challenging at every level. You can feel the anxiety that is bubbling up within all of us, and even in conversations that we are having with our neighbors. and I'm with the university, how academia is thinking about it, and the anxiety. And I'll tell this to you, since I'm in Florida, the anxiety that we feel within academia because of the heavy-handedness of our governor and the establishment, the political establishment in Florida, that is intruding on academic freedom, intruding on communities to keep their children safe by trying to take money away from public schools as they're enacting mass mandates. I was part of the group that was petitioning and asking the Duval County Public School to enact a mass mandate. After quite a bit of effort, that did happen, but now we are faced with the specter that they are going to lose funding. So all of those things, they're all pandemic or pandemic adjacent events that we are facing, and not to mention the crisis that the two other crises that we are living with. One of them we have been living it with centuries, but it was quite stark after the George Floyd murder. Our approach and our way in which we look at our racial harmony. That has also created almost unprecedented crisis that we are in the midst of, and we are certainly not out of that crisis. And the other one that we are living with, and we are quite anxious about what the future holds about it, is climate change. And all of these crises are coming to boil almost at the same time, and sometimes it is like one crisis feeds into the other, and it creates anxiety and it creates tension that is quite dangerous to our social harmony and our economic future.
So I want to follow up on that. First of all, I want to say, we are very sorry about your loss. I appreciate you and all the other panelists being so transparent in answering that first. And Dr. Parvez, talk to us about how your faith was able to guide you and keep you grounded in going through those losses and all those other kind of simultaneous crises you have laid out for us. How has your faith kept you during this time?
Faith does play an important role during this time. At a very intellectual level, we can. I often rely on scripture, the reading of scripture. There is a famous quote from my scripture, the Holy Quran, where God says, "To God we belong and to God we return." This is something that we say anytime somebody passes away or we hear of somebody else's or any death. So that kind of gives us a sense that the circle of life has begun and ended with the mercy of God, and the person that came from God has returned to God for their final resting place and their final journey. That gives us a lot of comfort, but also at a personal level, no matter how much we kind of try to use our mind to rationalize the grief, there are things that are beyond rationalization. You just feel it, and it is hard to express it. Loss of parents is one. And so many other people have lost their parents, their loved ones, their family members during this COVID. We know of many friends and family members that have lost their loved ones during this COVID, and that grief is hard to process. We give it time, and we think that time will heal all wounds, and honestly, sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Particularly during my circumstances, just to add a personal note to it, that I was unable to be with my mom during her last days and unable to be at her funeral. All of that was COVID precipitated, and actually she died of cancer, but she could not receive the kind of treatment because right as her cancer was detected, the pandemic was at its peak in India, and a lot of hospitals were not admitting any patients other than COVID patients. So it's hard. It's just no matter how much I try to take refuge in Scripture and look inward in it, I can tell honestly that it is something that it is indescribable and it's hard to process.
Dr. Siobhan, can you talk about how your faith has kept you during this time? And I'm sorry, I said Dr. Minister Siobhan.
Okay. No problem. I will say my faith is what grounds me and keeps me through just about anything in my life. And more so even during this time, it's my faith. There's been times when it seemed very dark, and it seemed like we were people without hope. But it is that my faith, even when I felt like the light was getting dim, it's that little bit of faith that that's on the inside of me that has helped me to hang on, helped me to keep hope. When I looked at the way things are going during the pandemic, and I'll say I even went through a period that I felt like I was having a faith crisis. Because it seemed like all the good was getting snuffed out, and all the good was being quieted. But then I remember ultimately, I know that light wins over darkness. And that's what has kept me. That's what has fueled me during this work. That's what's guided me in this moment throughout right now, as well throughout the whole pandemic. And I would say that holds true with the communities that we work with. In this year, when we launched this campaign, we went and worked in the communities, what is known as the Black Belt of Georgia. And so that's the communities across Georgia, primarily that are minorities, the communities that was hit so hard. And so one of the things that you will see that's common, regardless of where you are in the state, is that the church has always been the hub of the community. There people go for resources to assist with food, to assist with clothing, to assist with rent assistance, and other resources that people so frequently find themselves in need of, but particularly right now have been during the pandemic. And so it's like a natural progression that those same hubs that people have turned to over the years that are there for people have become a place where trusted messengers are that can spread this information armed with knowledge, but armed also with that the knowledge that there's good, that we're to love our neighbors, to see how we can translate that throughout the Bible. You see where faith meets medicine. And so I have to remind myself of that daily. And as I talk with others, that's what keeps me grounded. Faith meets medicine, whether you're in Old Testament scriptures, where you saw it when Hezekiah, he was sick unto death. And yes, he turned and he prayed to the wall. He turned to the wall and prayed to God for his life to be extended. And God granted him that. But then if you go just another couple of verses, you'll see where he took a poultice of figs and applied it to his wounds and was healed. You see that in the New Testament scriptures, also in the New Testament Christian scriptures, where the writer of the book of Acts and one of our gospels is a physician. And we see where the Bible says that, beloved, I wish you to prosper and to be in health, even as your soul prospers. So we know that there's a loving God that wants us to be healthy and that cares about us through this crisis. And so that helps fuel fuel my faith to keep going and to remind others. And the little bitty thing that's probably true among all faith traditions is that common good to love your neighbor. And so something as simple as wearing a mask or social distancing or staying home when needed or getting vaccinated to help you as well as to help your family and your friends or your coworkers or those others in your communities, all of whom are your neighbors. we find that we can root that right back into our faith. That's what I've drawn on. And I do this not in spite of my faith, but because of my faith. I have that faith to know that the science and technology has brought us this far to allow us to gain this knowledge, gain a vaccine. And yes, sometimes it gets confusing. Yes, sometimes it may appear that the message changed. But when you know better, you do better. That's the same with science. As more knowledge is gone, as it's new. It's a reason it's called the novel coronavirus. And so as we gain knowledge, to be able to shift and to be able to do things, to show our love for one another, to show our love for ourselves.
Thank you so much. That's a great segue. Dr. Gada, I wanted to ask you, please talk to us about why getting vaccinated is so important and why people of faith should be leading the way in the vaccination movement.
Well, first of all, I just want to again say thank you to both Dr. Ahmed and Siobhan for those inspirational words about how faith is inspiring the work that they're doing. In terms of the need to get vaccinated, the messages that we need to bring across from, in trying to bridge the medical or scientific community with community efforts is that vaccines are safe, they're effective, they'll protect us from getting sick. And in protecting us, we can also protect others. Even if one does acquire the virus after vaccination, vaccines will decrease hospitalizations and severity of disease. So it's very important for us to get vaccinated so that we can go back to doing the things that we love. We can be there for one another and we can support each other and go back to a normal life. In talking about not only the impact of COVID on our daily life and the impact of the disease on our daily lives, as Siobhan mentioned, we're still learning and we don't know what the impact of getting COVID is in the long term. So in protecting ourselves from the long-term impact of COVID-19 infections, it's very important to get vaccinated, and it's our effort to make sure that we're collectively safe so that we can achieve that point of herd immunity that will allow us to move on to normal life. In terms of the role of the faith leadership in this, again, as I mentioned earlier, never before have we seen just how important it is for our faith leaders, those who serve as trusted messengers, to speak on this issue and advocate for vaccination and healthy COVID-19 practices during this critical time, because they do have a key role in this process. A study done by PRRI showed that 4 in 10 vaccine hesitant individuals would be willing to take the vaccine should it be coming from a faith leader or from faith-based practices or events. Same thing goes with a similar statistic. I think I should read it out so I don't mess up the numbers. But among vaccine refusers, nearly 1 in 5 Americans who are vaccine refusers also say that one or more faith-based approaches is going to be helpful in this process and could change their mind. So again, the role of faith leaders is key here because they function as those trusted messengers within this time of much uncertainty, a time when we are many issues of mistrust have been revealed and need to be addressed in order for us to be able to move forward as a community and create health equity for everyone.
Joey, I want to bring you in. Can you talk a little bit about vaccinations and why the faith community should be leading in this effort?
Sure, and thank you, Tia. First, I just want to say that my heart goes out to Minister Siobhan and Dr. Parvez for your stories and the way this pandemic has impacted you personally, and appreciate your spiritual guidance. And Dr. Khan, appreciate your public health guidance. Speaking of guidance, people of faith are trusted messengers to other people of faith, and that's why it's so important that we're speaking out against some of the noise and misinformation and building trust in the vaccine. People of faith, faith leaders, clergy are trusted messengers, and places of worship and worship services are trusted spaces. And so to all the folks that are, I know we have a lot of clergy and faith leaders in our network, you are uniquely equipped to build hope and trust in the vaccine, because that's the way that's been provided. That's the way that we get out of this. We've been so fortunate here and with Faith in Public Life and our Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated campaign to work with so many faith leaders and clergy that are doing just that. But we also know that there's a lot of work to do for faith leaders to be building trust and getting out the word and just speaking out. There's a lot of work still to be done. So through taking the vaccine, not only, and other speakers have touched on this, it's an act that protects us, it protects our family, our loved ones, and our neighbors, but it's a hopeful act, and one where we will turn the corner to a brighter day. So I wanted to take just a minute out to talk about what's around the corner, because we are on the cusp of, I think, an exciting new, hopefully a turning point in this pandemic. And that's recently, in just the last few days, a kids vaccine for ages 5 through 11 has been approved by the FDA, and soon we will see the rollout of that. Of course, we don't know an exact date yet, but we do expect it to come in the coming weeks. And this is so important. We've had over 1 million kids ages 5 to 11 infected by COVID, 119 dead in the US. But right now, and why I wanted to talk about this, is it's the demographic that's where rates are rising. And, you know, I'm not a public health scientist, but it would appear that that's because this is the largest group where there just are no vaccinations. So with the rollout of the kids vaccine, we have the opportunity, if we do it, to kind of turn the tide here. And it just means so much for kids. It means that their education won't be interfered with anymore. And as a parent, I can attest to that. That's been a tough one. You know, we have so many disparities in many of the communities that we work in, like communities of color, where remote learning has been creating more disparity in education. And then there's just the mental health impacts of lack of activities, or you know, there's been a lot of reports of just how so many kids have lost a loved one, and how that's you know, whether it's a grandparent or a parent or a teacher or a friend, and how that's impacting their mental health. And at the end of the day, it restores normalcy and peace of mind. So it's my hope with Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated, the next step that our viewers take away is that what's coming down the pipe with the kids vaccine is very important. And just on a personal note, I've been very fortunate to not have been impacted in the ways that Minister Siobhan and Dr. Parvez have been. But my daughter contracted COVID when she was 4, and we were so lucky that she was largely asymptomatic. But I know that when the vaccine rollout for ages 5 through 11 happens, we're going to be the first ones in line, because that was a stressful time, and the peace of mind that will come with that vaccine is just going to mean so much to so many.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next question, I did want to briefly ask Siobhan or Parvez if you had anything to add, again, based on you guys both having personal experiences with people who you lost. What do you think the faith community should be doing to lead the way on vaccinations?
I think if it's so important for the faith community to remember the totality of persons. You know, we've talked about the physical aspects. Joy just mentioned something about the mental health challenges that can arise, one through the pandemic, and also for those that are ill. And we are a spirit, soul, and body. And so when I talk with faith leaders, and when I think of why people of faith should be leading the way, you can't separate out one or the other, because if any one part of you is hurting, your whole being is hurting. So we can't just think that, oh, well, I just want to create a sermon on Sundays, or I just want to get that right Bible study or that right message, without concerning ourselves with the physical and the mental health aspect of this. And because of that, and because we are trusted messengers, we're primed, and it's our duty to care about the whole being of anyone that's under our care. If they're under our spiritual care, then we got to care about them, their physical and mental health as well.
In a similar vein, one of the things that, if you note, leaders in faith communities are among the most trusted voices in the country. Over the last decade, or maybe more than 2 decades, there has been an erosion of public trust across the board. How we look at whether our courts, our law enforcement, political leadership, business leadership, the 2 communities that have pretty much held their own in terms of the public perception of their leadership are faith leaders and doctors. And to see that happen, which means that faith leaders and doctors are the most trusted messengers at this point in time. So if, as Minister Siobhan and Dr. Khan, they are leading their respective professions in this manner, it is reassuring to see that, because that's where the public is turning to for information. Public is turning to for assurances that getting the vaccine is safe. And, you know, they have done a heroic job, despite a lot of doubt that has been sometimes irresponsibly spread by political leaders, despite the negative influence of social media that has created an echo chamber in amplifying those doubts. It is remarkable to see how faith leaders and the medical professionals, healthcare professionals, have performed under these extreme circumstances. For the most part, they have done an A+ job.
Thank you guys so much. So now let's talk about solutions as far as what should we be saying to ensure those in our congregations and communities are getting vaccinated now, and what space should we be saying it in? You know, there are so many different avenues that the faith community could take. So I'll start with you, Joey. What should we be doing messaging wise?
Thank you. So, well, one reason why it's so important for communities of faith to message around building trust in the vaccine is that we have so much noise and disinformation out there. And our other panelists have touched on this, but I'll frame it a different way. When we have a faith message, it grounds us in reminding us in what is truly important, and hopefully cuts through some of that noise. A basic tenet of faith for so many faith communities everywhere is treating others as we wish to be treated and loving your neighbor. Getting a vaccine, wearing a mask is an expression of that. Not only does it keep you safe, it keeps your neighbor and your family members safe. So Dr. Ahmed and I are both from Jacksonville, and I want to provide just kind of like a local example of ways we can message to the community. Many watching may recall that Jacksonville, as well as other parts of Florida, were kind of ground zero in the U.S. when the Delta variant first flared up. And we're just a few months ago, we saw higher COVID-19 infections in Jacksonville than at any previous point during the pandemic, even before the initial rollout of the vaccine. In response, we launched a campaign called Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated, where we've been working with faith leaders and clergy like Dr. Parvez here and clergy across Florida in vulnerable communities to share trust-building messages and announcements during worship services in their churches or places of worship. It's been a really meaningful program, and it's one that's in progress and one that we hope is helping lead to a brighter day. One thing that we've seen on the ground and we're hearing from in the pews is that when vaccination events, for example, we've had a lot of like backpack giveaways when school started and coupled with free vaccination events. When we share those, just as a simple announcement, it can be 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or you can take the whole sermon if you want. But typically has just been short announcements during worship services, sharing when, where, and there's going to be a vaccination event. What we've been hearing from event organizers is that they've been seeing an uptick in people coming to their events because this message is being shared. Not just, we get it from TV, we get it from our news, we get it maybe from some friends or family, maybe we don't, maybe we get it from the workplace, maybe we don't, but we've definitely seen examples where sharing it in this most trusted space of places of worship, we've been seeing some upticks in people getting the shot.
And I do want to make sure that the journalists in me, we're clarifying right now, vaccinations are not approved yet for 5 to 11, but the requests for approval are pending with the FDA. Vaccinations right now are approved for 12 and up, but we're anticipating that in the coming weeks, probably in very short order, there will be additional vaccinations approved for those age 11 and younger. Dr. Gada, what do you think about the space that the faith community has and the role? What should we be saying to ensure that people of faith or people who are listening to faith leaders are getting vaccinated?
Well, in terms of faith leaders themselves seeing that their role is essential in this process, I think creating that collaboration and building that trust within the community across all disciplines is key here, so that everyone has a correct information. As everyone on this panel had also mentioned, that misinformation and the dissemination of myths and conspiracy theories can be very detrimental. And it's one thing that we've learned from this pandemic is the triumph of fear times over the correct information, and faith leaders definitely have that role to serve as trusted messengers, and in working in tandem with healthcare professionals and the medical community, and regaining that trust between the medical community and communities that have been disenfranchised by that mistrust that has been created through different historical incidences. We need to make sure that the medical community is working in tandem with the faith community, and also making sure that the faith community has those tools in place. If we're talking about these issues within houses of worship, we can look into looking at innovative ways to weave those messages into sermons and conversations, just regular day-to-day conversations with members of a congregation. Houses of worship are closely connected to schools as well. So amplifying the messages across all those partnerships and sectors where faith and a specific sector interact or intersect. So repeating those messages, creating that trust, using evidence-based methods to amplify the right information is key here.
Parvez, what do you think? Specifically, what spaces would you recommend that these messages about vaccinations be shared to reach perhaps those who are currently hesitant?
Yeah, I think as Minister Siobhan was mentioning, using the pulpit to send that message is absolutely crucial, because it's hard to get people attention, but anybody who has been in religious congregations, that for a very short period of time, people are listening to what is being said from the pulpit, and effectively using that time to provide that message would be very critical. There is still a lot of vaccine hesitancy. There is active subversion, like we saw just yesterday when former Secretary of State Colin Powell passed away. There was a lot of misinformation, even in the way media, Tia, a little bit taking kind of umbrage with the coverage that we saw by your esteemed colleagues in other newspapers. They led with the fact that he died of COVID without mentioning or leading with the headline that he had other comorbidities. Particularly, he was severely immunocompromised, which is the likely. In fact, the story should be that the death of Colin Powell from COVID is the perfect example why we need to get everybody immunized. Because there are people like him who are severely immunocompromised that do not have protection until the population is at a critical level of protection through vaccination. Instead of leading the story in that manner, the story misled the public, as if to say that Colin Powell was vaccinated and still he died of COVID. That was not the true reading of that incident. So I think maybe this coming weekend, faith leaders will have an opportunity to correct the record and share with their congregants how to take news and how to process news during this time, and also something that is part of our faith tradition but perhaps does not get emphasized enough, which is don't jump to conclusion from the first headline that you read in a story. Wait, be patient. Try to process the information. Go to your trusted messengers. If you're not able to process that information, don't rely on your distant friend on social media putting up the first meme and believing in that that's the entirety of the story. I think this is a time for all of us to be reflective, and I think using our pulpits to the best possible use would be very effective. The other thing is having medical professionals speak during our congregational periods, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, depending on our faith tradition. Just have a medical professional come up and give the congregation some facts and some ways in which they can deal with the constantly changing nature of the pandemic.
And Siobhan, what do you say about the venue, the place to reach people who are vaccine hesitant?
I say wherever they're at. In my faith tradition, which is Christianity, Jesus was out meeting people everywhere. Not his most of his work and his miracles didn't actually happen in the temple. And so as people of faith, we have to meet people where they're at. So yes, during our messages, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, depending on your faith tradition, yes. When it's in a midweek study, at a Bible study, I've found myself at food giveaways. at clothing giveaways, at back to school giveaways. I'll be at a fall festival this weekend, sharing the message about the vaccine. And what I will say too is that getting vaccinated is similar to a lot of other things. In the line of work that I found voting is relational. Getting vaccinated has been relational too. So being open, your experience with getting vaccinated, sharing it for faith leaders to share the message, to arm your lay leaders and arm your congregants so they could go out, and it multiplies that way. So if we're transparent, if we share our experience and that we've got vaccinated and our family has gotten vaccinated, then go and let them go, and then they share it, and we'll see it multiply, because studies have shown that there's increased likelihood to decrease hesitancy and increase vaccine uptake when somebody has done it. So if we all just be honest and open with our own journey, even if someone has been hesitant and then how you found yourself getting vaccinated, just letting someone know. So the answer as far as the space where people are, that's where the message should be. We can't depend on them to come to padded pews. So we have to go out in the vineyards. We have to go out in the communities. We have to go out in the grocery stores, and wherever we find that conversation that we can have an open, honest, empathetic conversation with folks. That's where we go. That's the space that it happens.
Well, we've had people who've been watching and are watching, so now we want to leave them with some tools to take home. So I'm going to start with you, Joey, and the question is, what should those watching, what can they do next? What can they do to help us get more people vaccinated?
Well, after that inspiring message from Minister Siobhan, I think folks are ready to do some stuff. So I'm going to share a few calls to action that we can all take. First off, specifically to the faith leaders and clergy watching, we're going to drop some links into the chat where if you're in Georgia or Florida or anywhere, you can sign up for the Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated program. Again, we're running these programs in Georgia and Florida, but if you're elsewhere, sign up and we will send you a faith leader toolkit with some messaging, best practices, and other things that you can do there in one place. Also, just, and this goes for both faith leaders and everyone, we should push back against the disinformation, but we should listen to the concerns of those that are hesitant. We should try to answer their questions. A lot of time has passed, and I think many are starting to realize that some concerns, the time has passed, and everything will be okay. The right thing to do is to get the vaccination. So we just want to, just talk to people, and I think a lot of our clergy and faith leaders and people of faith in particular are uniquely equipped to do that in a hopeful, not shameful way if we just do it. I want to encourage everyone to, as we get to the rollout, the expected rollout, and thank you, Tia, for correcting me. As a parent, I'm chomping at the bit, and I meant to say the anticipated rollout and recommendation of the kids age 5 to 11 vaccine. But we do believe that that's coming around the corner very quickly, and we want to be in a posture where we're ready to make sure all our kids age 5 to 11 get vaccinated, because right now that's really what the group, among others, where the rates are rising. And then finally, we've got holidays around the corner. So we got Halloween, we got Thanksgiving. And, just as a parent, and, we miss seeing some of our loved ones during the last year's holidays. And I think we're going to try to do that this year, now that many of us are vaccinated. So we just encourage people to, wear masks. The best thing you can do is get vaccinated if you haven't yet, to protect your family so you can see them over the holidays. And I'll close on kind of maybe a brighter note. We've got trick or treat in, I think, 11 days. And I read the other day that Spider-Man is the number one, and it's my favorite, but the number one Halloween costume this year. And the number one most frequently asked question right now for many of the groups where we're working on vaccines are Halloween masks okay for COVID mask. And I just wanted to tell everyone, the Spider-Man mask, I encourage you to wear it, but it doesn't count. We got to just make sure that we trick or treat safely, that we visit our family members safely, and just follow all the guidelines that have been there. And I think that we really will, with the holidays that are coming, be turning a corner and moving towards a brighter day. Thank you.
So we're going to do more about what people should be taking home. I'm going to go to Dr. Gada and then Parvez. We'll end with you, Siobhan. What should people watching take with them as what they can do to increase vaccinations?
I think making sure everyone is connected to a trusted messenger. The trusted messengers here being faith leaders and in combination with healthcare providers and those in the field, utilizing the tools that have already been created to disseminate information is going to be very helpful here. I know most of you have been working on these issues for quite some time right now and have developed those tools to serve as resources for healthcare providers. At MHP, we've created a Friday khutbah or Friday sermon guide for imams to use to encourage vaccinations. And there are other groups such as Imams for Vaccines who've created all these tools to support this effort so that more faith leaders are involved in this and are taking the lead in this as well.
I think we lost Dr. Gada. Oh, are you back? Okay. Were you done, Dr. Gada? We had a little technical snafu. I think she's still working on it. Dr. Parvez, while we wait for Gada to come back, do you want to talk about what you want people to take away?
Yeah, in addition to listening to your trusted leaders, whether in faith community or in the medical community, another thing as we can practice, which is part of faith traditions, is checking in with each other. This is part of the faith tradition. We always think of faith as not just a set of practices that we engage in, but also a communal effort, something that we do together as a community. So checking in with people, yes, we may not be able to visit them as frequently as we were in the past, but we can still check in with people, particularly if you don't see somebody in the congregation for a while. It's not a bad idea to give them a phone call or send them a message and check in with them to see how they're doing. If they're afraid of something, then give them or send them to the right messenger to get this kind of message and the information that would be reliable. So in addition to all of the leadership work that is done, I think there is a fair amount of work that can be also done at the grassroots level.
Thanks so much. And we'll end with you, Minister Siobhan, as far as takeaways.
Thank you. I appreciate everything that's been offered here so far. And the biggest takeaway, faith leaders, lay leaders, we're all in this together. We need to arm ourselves with knowledge and then arm those and empower those around us with that same knowledge. Use trusted resources, tap into our healthcare systems. Faith and Public Life have some awesome information that you can go on that's been shared with you. Go to trusted websites. Stay off social media and other misinformation sites. I won't say information sites, but misinformation sites. But find yourself with healthcare providers and trusted information sites, and use this moment to remember that we are all in this together. We're all going to end up get out of it together. And so it's this time now that we can really join hands, link arms, and keep the faith and get vaccinated.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gada, I know that you had some technical difficulties. I didn't want you to feel like you couldn't finish your thought if you were had anything more you wanted to add.
Thank you. I have no more to add, since my colleagues have definitely touched upon all the necessary tools for us to move forward with this and make sure that this partnership continues. If anything, we're seeing that this is something that needs to be sustained. Hopefully we can continue to elevate and amplify the role of faith leaders in pulling our communities forward and working with communities towards creating health equity.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our panelists today, Dr. Parvez Ahmed, Dr. Gada Khan, Joey McKinnon, Minister Siobhan Williams, as well as Reverend Jen Butler, who is the CEO of Faith in Public Action. We thank you all for tuning into our panel today. We hope you took away some great information as far as not only the importance of vaccines, but our role as people of faith in encouraging people to get vaccinated. Faith in Public Action does have its Keep the Faith, Get Vaccinated campaign. And wherever you're streaming it, I believe they link to some of that information in the chat. But you can also, of course, visit the Faith in Public Action website for more information. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to today's discussion. And of course, if you have not already, please get vaccinated. Oh, and I'm Tia Mitchell of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, your moderator. Thanks for joining us.